تبارك الله رب العالمين.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله الذي جعل ذكره طمأنينة للقلوب وجلاء لها عن رين الذنوب ومطردة لوسواس الخناس المكذوب، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد الداعي إلى كل فعل محبوب وأمر مطلوب، وعلى آله وأصحابه المقتفين سبيله على خير أسلوب. أما بعد، فيقول رب تبارك وتعالى في كتابه المنزل: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الذين ينفقون في السراء والضراء والكاظمين الغيظ والعافين عن الناس والله يحب المحسنين. وقال: فبما رحمة من الله لنت لهم ولو كنت فظا غليظ القلب لانفضوا من حولك فاعف عنهم واستغفر لهم وشاورهم في الأمر فإذا عزمت فتوكل على الله إن الله يحب المتوكلين. صدق الله العظيم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who created us and knows us in intimate detail, says that those who spend in the cause, in His cause, in Allah's cause during ease and hardship, and who restrain their anger, and who pardon people, who forgive people, Allah will love the doers of good. And then the Prophet ﷺ is reminded that it is with a special mercy from him that he became Rahmatan lil Alameen. And Allah explains also to him in this verse that were you to be hard-hearted and severe and harsh, then people would have moved away from you. The relationship would have broken. People would have broken away from you. And in that is a message that hard-heartedness, harshness, anger is something that pushes people apart. And continuing today in our 15th lesson, continuing from last week, where we dealt with the polar opposite to anger, which was hilm, the quality that every believer should seek to cultivate, because that is the quality that gives the human being a strength to control. In developing that station of hilm, and in the following in the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, and those who learnt this quality of hilm. And I explained to you that, look, forbearance is the translation that's usually given, but because we speak English of a different kind, not very many people are familiar with the word forbearance. So I gave you a series of other words that would bring the meaning closer to mind, and those were things like to be gentle, to be mild-mannered, to be calm, to remain calm, and to be self-restraint, and to show discipline, self-discipline, and control, self-possession, leniency, tolerance, and discretion, prudence, willpower, strength of will. All of these are words that we know, we understand, and they should bring home the meaning of hilm. Hilm is the one that does not seek intiqam, that does not seek revenge, that is not quick to take intiqam, to take revenge, because ghadab, anger, is the definition that some scholars give for ghadab is غليان الصدر وغليان الدم في القلب بغرض الانتقام. It is the boiling of blood and raising in the heart, of raising heat and blood, the boiling with the intention of seeking revenge. And we will come back to this. But today, I want to, before I do that, I need to also remind you about the meaning, the full meaning of it in Arabic, which is that Allah has mentioned this word in the Quran, and when He mentioned it, The word that he used for maturity, which we use in day-to-day Arabic, is bulugh. Balagha yablughu, to reach maturity. But in the Quran, Allah uses the word hulum. And hulum here has two meanings. One is to enter into maturity, to have power of perception, to distinguishing between right and wrong, but also to enter to see adult dreams. Hulum is also one of the meanings is dreams. But the second meaning, from the second conjugation from the bab karuma, it gives you the meaning of hilm. I mean, meanings that when a child reaches puberty, when a child reaches maturity, then they are also required to spend time focusing on the need to control their emotions and to control anger in particular, hilm, to seek to develop this quality. And this is what I want to deal with today, is the relationship between anger and uquq. And we are dealing with uquq al-walidain, which is harshness to parents, being dismissive to parents, being angry with parents, being disobedient to parents, having disdain for parents, and having an attitude that breaks the heart of the parent. And most disobedience and harshness to parents are initiated by anger, because there is some level of anger is fostered in the heart, and then that anger leads to harsh responses to the parent. Between the child, the parent is seen as an object of intiqam, of taking revenge for behavior that they have done, and most of it is usually misconstrued, imagined behavior, grievances. So we have to understand that there's a connection between the anger and your behavior towards the parents, that it is at the seat of it is your inability to control anger. And parents being your first relationship to another human being, if you fail to control your anger in this first relationship, then you are likely to fail in others. Now, I know a lot of people who say, no, well, yes, if you see my son outside, if you see my child outside, you would think that they are the best child in the world. They are kind and courteous and nice to people. But when they come home, they speak to me like if I'm a slave. They speak to me like I have no worth. And so we are able to do this also, and this is known as Dhul Wajhain, a person who has two faces. And this is hypocrisy. That's one more level, that's a higher level of danger that you can enter. But today we are talking about the fact, and last week we discussed the relationship that Allah is calling you to recognize that hulum, and Allah says, وَإِذَا بَلَغَ الْأَطْفَالُ مِنْكُمَ الْحُلُمَ فَلْيَسْتَأْذِنُوا, that when they reach this point, they have entered adulthood, and they need to control, just like they control their food and everything else about themselves. They need to have a sense of controlling. If we do not learn this, the controlling emotion, and start learning it from then we will grow up with anger ingrained in our psyche. And then the other indication to this is also mentioned in verse. So this verse was Surah Nur. In Surah Nur, verse 59, Allah says, وَإِذَا بَلَغَ الْأَطْفَالُ الْحُلُمْ. And then the other verse is the one I said to you in the beginning of this series. That was the verse of Surah Al-Ahqaf, where Allah says, وَإِذَا بَلَغَ أَشُدَّهُ, that when he reaches his prime, when he reaches into adolescence, and Allah mentions balagha twice here, وَإِذَا بَلَغَ أَشُدَّهُ, that when you reach there, then you have to start praying. This was the sixth command that we mentioned about taking care of parents, is that you have to pray for them. Not only control your behavior, but you have to bring it to your mouth to show gratitude. And this is why Allah is saying, وَإِذَا بَلَغَ, you should say, رَبِّ أَوْزِعْنِي أَنْ أَشْكُرَ نِعْمَتَكَ الَّتِي أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيَّ. Oh Allah, enable me so that I can be grateful for the bounty you have given to me and through my parents. So that gratitude has to be part of that sense of control in front of the parent. And the other balagha, he said, وَبَلَغَ أَرْبَعِينَ سَنَةً. Two types. And in Arabic, they call it مُرَاهَقَةُ الْأَرْبَعِينَ. When you reach the adolescence of the 40th year. And in English, we often refer to this 40th year as the time. Around 40, many people go through changes. And sometimes they have what was known as midlife crisis. أزمة نصف العمر منتصف العمر, when you go through this midlife crisis. And one of the reasons for it is that your brain at the age of 40 starts to shrink. That's the first time it starts. And when that starts, that creates problems, and you lose your contact, you lose the control that you had, that you have developed in adulthood from adolescence to then you lose it, and you might end up into trouble. So Allah is reminding you there, you have to steer, you have to be careful there, and you have to be careful. So both murahaqatul when you enter the first adolescence, and then murahaqatul arba'in, the 40th year, when both of these, you're called upon to pay attention. And the paying attention is to control, and the way you do it is through praying for your parents. And this is what Allah is calling you to pay attention to. Now the next connection that I want to draw is between anger and fire. Allah has given us fire in this world for useful purposes, and it can also become destructive. Fire. In every language, fire and anger are connected. People, if you speak about people getting angry, you can talk about it in terms of temperature, that the temperature is rising. If we say in English, heated conversation. That means the temperature is rising. When anger takes over, it raises the temperature. In Urdu, we say garma garmi, which is garam, which means hot. You're getting hot. People are so there's temperature attached to it. Now, and as I said, Imam Ghazali explains this. He says that فَإِنَّ الْغَضَبَ شُعْلَةُ نَارٍ اُقْتُبِسَتْ مِنْ نَارِ اللَّهِ الْمُوقَدَةِ الَّتِي تَطَّلِعُ عَلَى الْأَفْئِدَةِ وَإِنَّهَا مُسْتَكِنَّةٌ. That this is fire that Allah has created, this heating and fire, and it is in it. He has created it for us. He has created for our benefit. إِنَّهَا لَمُسْتَكِنَّةٌ فِي طَيِّ الْفُؤَادِ, that it is in the folds of our heart. Anger, this fire of anger is in the heart. Right? He said, and istikanat al-jumr, it is like a amber on the taht al-rimad, on the ashes, yastakhrijuha al-kibr, and it is brought out, and it can get overwhelming. Now, the point to bear in mind here is that anger, like fire, if it's used properly, if it is controlled, then it can come to your service, and this is what Allah has put in us, so that we are able to defend ourselves from harm in the world. So you need heat, you need to be able to stand up to things. But if that anger gets out of control, then something else happened. It is like the fire you have in your house on the stove and the fire that engulfs the whole house. There's a difference. We teach children not to play with matches because it's very nice, it's exciting to play with matches, but you have to show them what it can do. You have to explain to children that, look, if you play with fire, then you can end up burning the whole house down. And it's the same thing. If you do not learn to control the anger, it also can burn your whole life down. And today, that's what I want to call your attention to. Al-ghadabu min al-nar. Rasulullah ﷺ said, Al-ghadabu min al-nar. That anger, it is from fire. So it is like this, like our treatment. Our caution with fire has to be exactly, our caution with anger has to be exactly like our caution with fire, how we treat fire. So, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الغضب من الشيطان. Ghadab, anger, is from shaitan. وإن الشيطان خلق من النار. That shaitan was created from fire. وإنما تطفئ النار الماء. And verily, fire is put out with water. فَإِذَا غَضِبَ أَحَدُكُمْ فَلْيَتَوَضَّعْ. And this is one of the advice that Rasulullah gave, that if you're overcome by anger, then you should do wudu. You should do it. And they have been practicing this in the psychiatric wards in America now. I've seen a report that people who are suffering from psychiatric illnesses, they were teaching them to go in the morning, every morning, and wash twice a day. They were to wash their limbs, their hands and face and feet, and that changes their own temperament throughout the day. The psychological benefits, that's let alone the spiritual benefits that comes from the washing off of the sins. The sins fall off like leaf falls off from the tree. That's how you become clean. So now the connection between that and uquq al-walidain and treatment of parents is linked to what Rasulullah ﷺ told us: rida al-rabbi fi rida al-walid, wa sakhat al-rabbi fi sakhat al-walidain. That the pleasure of Allah is in the pleasure of the parent, and the pleasure and the anger of Allah is in the anger of the parent. So keep that in mind and recognize that خلق الله طبيعة الغضب من النار وغرزها في الإنسان, that he created this and he's planted it in us. We have this quality in us, and it is for a beneficial purpose, just as fire is for a benefit. We cook with it. We are the only creature that cook food, and this enables us to do things. Now, but we have to keep a balance between hypothermia and hypothermia, hypo and hyper, because if we get too cold in the body, then we suffer. If the heat gets too much, then we suffer. And in this regard, we are divided into three types of states that a person can end up in regard to anger. إن الإنسان في هذه القوة, this is what Imam Ghazali رحمة الله عليه says, على درجات ثلاث في أول الفطرة من التفريط والإفراط والاعتدال. So one is that you have no fire to cook, and the other is that you have too much fire that will burn the house down, and one that you have just the right amount of heating to cook. Now today what I want to do is to bring to attention the effect, just as we bring to attention of a child the effect of their misdeed, of mismanaging of fire, human beings need to bring to attention the effect of fire, the effect of anger, the fire of anger on their lives. And this is what is done, because when we are angry, one is that your perceptions are reduced, so you don't see, you're unable to perceive what is going on. And because the entire system is traumatized and not working properly when you're anger, the memory also fails. So we don't remember what happens. If I ask you when is the last time you were angry, you're terribly angry, and do you remember how you looked? Did you look in the mirror and see yourself? You wouldn't realize, you wouldn't know. Now we all spend time looking in front of the mirror to beautify ourselves. We groom ourselves and make sure our clothes is good and everything. But if I tell you that there's something that can turn that beautiful face, that beautiful composition that you have created, into an ugly construction, in the matter of seconds, you can become from that beautiful face that Allah has given you to an ugly face. What is it that turns that? Anger. So we need to understand that, and this is what Imam Ghazali has written in detail, explaining that so we can bring home that message. And that is what I want to read to you today. He says, وأما الأسباب الاعتيادية فهو أن يخالط قوما. Oh yes, before you do that, he's the habitual angry person, glamorizing anger. How do you fall into this? How does one develop this attitude of entering into anger? Is that first of all, you fail at the point where you should start, which is at your adolescence you should begin, which is what the Quran seems to be pointing in this ayah, is that the minute you've become adult, the minute you've become mature, then you need to learn to control the anger. But what happens is that we find in some cultures and in some families, some tribes, they have a different attitude towards anger, and we see it as a source. Anger becomes glamorized, and in the culture we live today, it's perhaps not glamorized in day-to-day interactions, but certainly in the fantasy world of the movies, the hero is always fulfilling his anger. Now, this is the problem. He says, فهو أن يخالط قوما يتبجحون بتشفي الغضب وطاعة الغضب. He said, if you spend time with people who are responding and who aggrandize, who glamorize anger and talk about following it and exacting retribution, ويسمون ذلك شجاعة ورجولية, and they name that courage and manhood and being macho. فيقول الواحد أنا الذي لا أصبر على المكر والمحال ولا أحتمل من أحد. And then they end up saying statements, jahiliyyah. This is jahili poetry, the poetry of ignorance, where they say, well, I do not bear anything from anyone. I always fulfill my anger. The meaning of this, معناه أنه لا أقل لي ولا حلم لي. In true meaning, what you're actually saying, when you say this, when you use anger and you describe anger in these glamorous terms, what you're doing is that you're building an argument to say that I have no reasoning and I have no hilm. ثم يذكره في معرض الفخر. He's mentioning it, boasting with it in his ignorance. فمن سمعه, and whoever hears this, then that becomes part of their perception of what anger is. They do not understand. ومهما اشتعلت نار الغضب وقوي اضطرامها, that whenever the flame of anger is lit in the heart, it's lit in an individual, and it starts to blaze, أعمت صاحبها. The first thing it does is that it blinds you from seeing things clearly. وصمته عن كل موعظة. And the next is that it shuts his ears off to any advice, any admonishing. If you try to give him an advice, and there's a story that happens, but we were running out of time at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, where advice is not even taken. فإذا وعظ لم يسمع. If he is given advice, he does not take it. بل زاده ذلك غضبا. He becomes more angry with that. فإن استطاع بنور عقله راجع نفسه لم يقدر. And even if he tries to check, to bring some sanity to that in the midst of anger, he is unable to do so. إذ ينتفع نور العقل. The light of reasoning in the mind goes. Mental capacities are raised. ينحمي فيه في الحال بدخان الغضب. And he's using dukhan, smoke. He said the smoke of the fire of anger then clouds his thinking, his understanding. He cannot see. فإن معدن الفكر الدماغ. The crystal or the foundations of thought is the brain. ويتساعد شدة الغضب من غليان دم القلب دخان إلى الدماغ مظلم ويستولي عليه على معادن الفكر. That this boiling inside of the anger rises to the brain and then clouds it up like a black cloud. It covers a dark cloud. حتى لا يرى بعينه. He does not see with his eyes. وتسود عليه الدنيا بأسرها. And the whole world becomes dark. ويكون دماغه على مثال كهف اضطرمت فيه نار. And his brain, his life, his view then becomes like the example of a cave in which a fire is lit. And that fire causes the entire cave to become dark. And there's no light in it. And if that fire, there's no way to approach that fire. It burns. And it burns, it destroys the walls. It takes and turns the whole place black with soot. And eventually that fire will cause a collapse sometimes of the cave. And he says that is why sometimes you will find people having stroke from rage of anger. So you will collapse. You can collapse. It can destroy the brain. And he said بالحقيقة فالسفينة في ملتطم الأمواج عند اضطراب الرياح في لجة البحر أحسن حالا وأرجى سلامة من النفس المضطربة غيظا. He said that a ship in the sea, in the throes, being thrown around by waves, is safer. If a ship is being thrown around, that is in a safer position than a person who's been gripped in the rage of anger. And the reason he said that there's إن في السفينة من يحتال لتسكينها وتدبيرها وينظر لها ويسوسها. That in a ship you will have people who will run around trying to stabilize it and raising the mast and pulling it down and checking and trying to see. But here أما القلب. But as for this person who is taken up with anger, he's in the rage. فهو صاحب السفينة. He's the captain of the ship and the only one in the ship. He is the only one. So وقد سقطت حيلته, and he has lost all his bearings. He doesn't know what he's doing. It's أعماه الغضب, and the anger has now turned him blind and he cannot see. ومن آثار الغضب. Now this is the one you need to pay attention to when you look in relation to the mirror, because this is how a beautiful face is turned ugly in a matter of seconds. He says from the effect of anger on you is that تغير اللون, that your color of your face changes. وشدة رعده في الأطراف, and then you have quivering of your limbs. وخروج الأفعال عن الترتيب والنظام, and then your actions are erratic and uncontrolled, and واضطراب الحركة, quivering actions and speech. حتى يظهر الزبد على الأصداق, and then froth comes out of your mouth, on the corners of your mouth. And then وتحمر الأصداق, and then the eyes become red. وتنقلب المناخر, and then the nostrils turned upside down. And وتستحيل الخلقة, and then you become something strange. You are transformed into something strange because of it. ولو رأى الغضبان في حال غضبه قبح صورته لسكن غضبه حياء من قبح صورته. That if the angry person was to see the picture of himself, the ugly picture of himself while he is angry and able to perceive it, then he will refrain from being angry. وقبح باطنه أعظم من قبح ظاهره. And the problem here is that the ugliness of the outside is not as much as the ugliness in the inside. The inside is worse. فَإِنَّ الظَّاهِرَ عُنْوَانِ الْبَاطِنِ, that the external is a representation, is fruit of the internal. وَإِنَّمَا قُبِّحَتْ سُورَةُ الْبَاطِنِ أَوَّلًا, that the internals have become ugly first. And then فَقِسِ الْمُثْمَرَةِ بِالثَّمَرَةِ فَهَذا أَثَرُهُ فِي الْجَسَدِ, and this is the effect of it on the body, of what happens on the body. وَأَمَّا أَثَرُهُ فِي اللِّسَانِ, as for what happens on the tongue, he says فانطلاقه بالشتم والفحش وقباح الكلام الذي يستحي منه ذو العقول, that his tongue is then unleashed into saying things, foul things, obscenities and profanities, that he himself would be, that people with mind would be ashamed to say. ويستحي منه قائله عند فتور الغضب, he himself will be ashamed of what he said. وذلك ما تخبط الضغم واضطراب اللفظ, and then he has confused sentences. He says one thing and then contradicts himself, and senseless words. وأما أثره على الأعضاء, that is tongue. As for the effect of anger on the body, he's saying that فالضرب والتهجم والتمزيق والقتل والجرح عند التمكن من غير مبالاة, that he indulges in hitting, attacking, tearing, and killing and wounding anyone as much as he can without any consideration. فَإِنْ هَرَبَ مِنْهُ الْمَغْضُوبِ, and if his victims run away, if your victim or his victim escapes him, or he fails to inflict the pain, رَجَعَ الْغَضَبُ عَلَى صَاحِبِهِ, he then becomes angry with his own self. The anger turns to him. فَمَزَّقَ ثَوْبَ نَفْسِهِ, and then he will tear his own clothes. And then وَقَدْ يَضْرِبُ بِيَدِهِ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ, and he hits the ground. And وَيَعْدُ الْوَالِيَ السَّكْرَانَ الْمَدْهُوشَ الْمُتَحَيِّرُ, and then he runs like a mad person, a person who is intoxicated and under the influence. وَرُبَّمَا يَسْقُطُ صَرِيعًا, maybe he may fall. وَلَا يُطِيقَ الْعَدْوَ وَالنُّهُوض لِشِدَّةِ الْغَضَبِ, he may fall and not be able to get up. وَيَعْتَرِيهِ مِثْلُ الْغَشْيَ, and there's some stupor that takes over him. وَرُبَّمَا يَضْرِبُ الْجَمَادَاتِ وَالْحَيْوَانَاتِ فَيَضْرِبُ, that he may even hit inanimate objects, the wall. You see people kicking their cars and kicking the things that have no life, and also حيوانات and animals. فَيَضْرِبُ الْقَصْعَةَ مثلا على الأرض, and then he slams the plates on the ground. وَقَدْ يَكْسِرُ الْمَائِدَةِ إِذَا غَضِبَ عَلَيْهَا, and he breaks the table if he gets angry with the table. وَيَتَعَاطَى أَفْعَالَ الْمَجَانِينَ, and then he adopts actions of insane people. فيشتم البهيمة والجماد ويخاطبها ويقول إلى متى هذا منك وياك, that he will address inanimate objects, things that have no life, and speak to them like if they are things of intelligence. He speak to them and address them and say, oh, how long will you continue to do this? كأنه يخاطب عاقلا, as if he is speaking to something intelligent. حتى ربما رفصته دابة, and sometimes an animal may kick you if you address them and speak to them like that, and then he kicks back and acts like an animal. So insanity, this is the point, is that anger brings you into insanity. And then أثره في القلب, and as for the long-term effects of this on the heart, he says أما أثره في القلب مع المغضوب عليه فالحقد والحسد وإدمار السوء والشماتة بالمساءات والحزن. He said that you develop rancor, you develop hate towards people when you have anger long-term towards them, and envy, and rejoicing in their misfortune, and having joy over their good fortune, and grief over their happiness, and determination. وإفشاء السر والعزم على إفشاء السر وهتك السطر والاستهزاء وغير ذلك من القبائح. That what he does is that he indulges mentally in all negative attitude towards that person. Now, what we have to remember here is that fire is contagious. Anger is contagious. When you are angry with someone, then it causes a person's anger too. Just like one tree is burning and the fire will become contagious. If the other tree is dry, it will also traverse. And with the parent, we have to remember that when you will display this anger, the child of every parent is the most beautiful child in the world. Beauty of that child may vary from one to the other, but to the parent, that child is the most beautiful. And there is only one point, there is only one time where the child becomes ugly to the parent, and that is when they're angry. And know that anger is something that causes, it is contagious, just like fire placed next to one dry tree is burning, the other will catch fire. And if you are angry, if you display this anger to your parents, then they are human beings. And their heart, the pain in the heart, will also create anger. And there you have to remember what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to us. What did he say? He said that Rida Rabb fi Rida al-Walid. That the pleasure of Allah, we all need the pleasure of Allah, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was asked, what is the most severe thing? One Sahaba said to him, ما هو الأشد? What is the most severe thing in the world? And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, غضب الله. That the anger of Allah, there's nothing like it in the world. When Allah gets angry, there are lots of jabbarin, tyrants in the world who say that, people must fear us. But then when Allah decides that the world belongs to me, that I am the one, and when His anger comes, then everyone else starts to tremble. This is mentioned in hadith. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us so that Allah will fold up and He will say, Ayn al-Jabbarun. He said, where are the tyrants? Now, Ana al-Malik. That I am, and everyone will be trembling on the day of judgment. So the anger of Allah is the greatest. So that man said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how do I protect myself from the anger of Allah? And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, La taghdab, do not be angry yourself. Control your own anger, then you will be protected from that. And to control this in the point that with the parent, if you are angry, the contagion of the anger will enter into their heart. And if they get angry with you, remember what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Sakhatullah fi sakhatil walidain. That the anger of Allah is linked to the anger of the parent. So you will earn it. So the lesson today is to contemplate the transformation of fostering anger in your life. And this is the first lesson. We will have many more lessons about this. We will go through all the details about anger in relation to this first relationship. Because as I said, the first relationship, if you fail, then you are likely to fail in other relationships. And the tragedy for failing in the relationship with your parents is so dire, it's so dangerous, it's so catastrophic that you cannot afford. All other relationships in the world will not suffice you. The failure of your relationship with your parents. May Allah give us the tawfiq to do the right thing in relation to our parents. وَجَزَاكُمُ اللَّهُ خَيْرًا وَالسَّلَامُ عَلَيْكُمْ وَرَحْمَةُ اللَّهِ وَبَرَكَاتُهُ.
تبارك الله